Well, it's the day after Christmas, and happy Boxing Day to our friendly neighbor up in the north, or if you're watching from the UK, happy Boxing Day to you too, although technically, by the time you watch this video, it's already the 27th in the UK. But today, we are going to continue with our Moving Forward series, talking about CF Montreal. Now, this might sound weird, but if there's any team that might be the most happiest coming out of this season, despite not making the playoffs, got to be Montreal, because this season coming in, there was so much uncertainty with this team, and also chaos coming in to this team with the way that Thierry Henry left this team unexpectedly just a couple of weeks before the season began, and they had to scramble to get their assistant head coach Wilfred Nancy as their permanent head coach. And then there was the question of all the signings that made and whether or not if it actually gels into a good team. And then let's also not forget to mention the fiasco with the rebrand and how there was clashes between the front office and the ultras, and there was some bad blood relationship even with the fans and the front office throughout the season. And yet this team was just one game away from making the playoffs. Have they won that game against Orlando City on decision day, they would have made it to the playoffs and exceed even the smallest expectation that they had coming into this season. So overall, this season, they finished with a 12-10-12 record and finished with 46 points. They score 46 goals this season, give up 44 goals, and have a goal differential of +2. Don't let them finish 10th in the Eastern Conference distract you. The fact that this team was that close of making the playoffs. Like, the playoff picture heading into decision day in the East was incredibly close, and unfortunately, Montreal with that loss, they kind of finished the lowest in terms of all those teams that was fighting for that last crucial playoff spot in the Eastern Conference on decision day, and therefore that's why they finished 10th in the Eastern Conference. But one of the things that I think will also make Montreal fans very happy after the season over is that even though they got eliminated, that wasn't their final game. Their final game was actually in the Canadian Championship against Toronto FC, and they won that Canadian Championship. So they actually won some silverware, and as I always said, if you're able to win silverware even in a disappointing year, or in this case an incredible year that Montreal has had despite not making the playoffs, it's considered a successful year, and that they're also going to be going back to the CONCACAF Champions League next season. Top goal scorer for this Montreal team, you got Romel Kyoto with 8 goals, and really have rediscovered his good form that he had with the Houston Dynamo. I mean, besides that horror miss that he has, which, I've always talked about that horror miss because it was, like, if you have not seen that horror miss that he had in that game against, oh god, I forgot who it was, but this was back when Montreal was still down in Florida and playing in Inter Miami's home stadium. But that horror miss, that was probably the worst miss we've seen this season. But if you ignore that, it's been an incredible season for Romel Kyoto, and probably could have hit double digit if he was able to stay healthy throughout the season. He actually had some injury problems throughout the season too, but there was no doubt that he was the most important attacker for this Montreal team. Followed by Mason Toye, who, thank you Minnesota, and in many ways, this, I kind of expected this for Mason Toye. I mean, I think for me, I will also say that I still don't have regrets of the fact that the Loons let go of Mason Toye. I mean, I feel like in some way it was harsh, but it was going to happen, because you just kind of feel like you just need a change of scenery, and boy, that change of scenery really helped him. And like Kyoto, he's another guy that could have ended up scoring double digit if he did not have those injury issues throughout the season too. Then you got Ibrahim Sanusi with 4 goals, followed by Georgi Mihailovic with 4 goals, and Joaquin Torres with 4 goals to finish the top goal scorer chart. Top assist leader, Georgi Mihailovic, with 16 assists to finish this season, and he actually was second in terms of the most assists this season in the entire league, just behind Carlos Hill. And Georgi Mihailovic, I'll talk a little bit more about him, of how that gamble that Montreal decided to pay $1 million to the Chicago Fire in order to get Mihailovic definitely pay off in the end. Then you got Romel Kyoto with 6 assists, Joaquin Torres with 5 assists, Zachary Brogiouts with 3 assists, and Kamal Miller finished with 3 assists also to round up the top 5 assist leader for CF Montreal. What went right for this team? Like I said, they won the Canadian Championship again, once again beating Toronto FC to now be able to participate in the CONCACAF Champions League again. Most of the signing of this team in the offseason was actually a hit. So, I talked about this last offseason, despite the many signings that they made last year. There was a lot there was a lot of kind of pessimism in the Montreal fan base that, most of these signings, I don't know if it's going to actually work out. And boy, it actually worked out in a big way. And this is also where I go back, talk about Georgi Mihailovic and that gamble that Montreal did. Because, I thought when they paid $1 million for Mihailovic, and despite he had a breakout year with the Chicago Fire, I was still skeptical of the fact that whether or not if he can repeat that heading into this season. And boy, not only he has repeat that, but he is really becoming one of the best number 10 in the league, and a guy that I feel like also is being underappreciated. I mean, I'm kind of surprised the fact that he hasn't been called up by the national team, and even himself have expressed his frustration of the fact that he's not been called the national team, even though he has probably had the best season in his career, and I think he's just going to begin of his projectile to really start to go up, and a guy that I also could think that in a couple of years he could make that jump to Europe. But you also got guys like Mason Toy. I talked about them getting him from Minnesota, and that change of scenery have really helped him to look like the Mason Toy that we saw in 2019 when he was with Minnesota. And then of course getting Kamal Miller from Orlando City. There was always a lot of people said that was a good move because it will solidify that back line for Montreal, and it definitely did. It was a big part of this season in terms of making that back line much more sturdy than we've seen in the past. And even guys that maybe haven't been talked about as a good signing, but I would kind of give them as an honorable mention. I mean, Sanusi Ibrahim, him scoring some big goals down the stretch. Even guys like Humpty scoring some big goals down the stretch in some of the games that Montreal has played, and it just feels like so far pretty much almost all the signings that they had in the offseason, which was a lot of doubts heading into this year, turns out to be a huge hit. And I think the only signings that maybe kind of turns out to be a bust for Montreal was Bjorn Johnson, who just really never got going with this team. And then, of course, the last thing went right for this Montreal team is Wilfried Nancy. I mean, a guy that was just kind of almost an emergency replacement coming into it. I mean, I know they did name him as the permanent head coach, but it was just like so rushed in a way that I just don't know if this is going to work out. And I also kind of feel really bad for Wilfried Nancy to have to kind of step in, not even having a proper off season, and just kind of throw into the fire and hope that it will work out. And boy, did it work out. Now, great. I mean, he was really emerged of being one of the best head coach in MLS. And I even said that, if you ignore Bruce Arena, who we knew that he was going to win the coach of the year, but, besides him, there was definitely a good discussion between him, Robin Fraser, or even Hearn Lasada potentially winning the coach of the year award this season. I mean, if this Montreal team did make it to the playoffs, then there is really a good discussion between him and Robin Fraser. And if you also want to include Bruce Arena in discussion of who could potentially winning the coach of the year. So what went wrong for this Montreal team? Well, again, it's kind of weird to say that a team that did not make the playoffs, not much kind of went wrong with this team. And that I think if there is one thing that definitely went wrong with this team, is the rebrand. I mean, I've talked about before of the rebrand fiasco, and I also said that this looked like it was going to be a disaster, and that Montreal fans are going to be up in arms, and we definitely saw that. I mean, the Ultras were one of the ones that were definitely up in arms and was kind of protesting nonstop in the front office about the rebrand, and they have every right to do so, because how in the world did they take one of the most historic name in MLS, that is the Montreal Impact, and just kind of change them to Club de Foot Montreal, and kind of just continue this boring cycle of a lot of these teams just going with a generic European team? It's just beyond on me. I mean, I will say that the logo itself, as much as I know Montreal fans also kind of bash on that, I don't think the logo is that bad, and I do like the snow flurries kind of logo, as many people have said. But in terms of the name itself, then yeah, I do agree that they have every rights to be angry, because this team should always be known as the Montreal Impact, and not known by a generic CF Montreal team kind of namesake after they decide to rebrand this offseason. The inconsistency throughout the season. So there is one thing that I think also kind of doomed this Montreal team is the inconsistency and the fact that they really never got onto a good run throughout the season, and also they have never kind of got a bad run too. They kind of always have like these 1 game or 2 game winning streak followed by like a 2 game losing streak and then getting draws, and that's kind of the definition of inconsistency. And while inconsistency sometimes could get you near the contention of making the playoffs and get you maybe heading into the final day of the season a shot of making the playoffs. The problem with Montreal is what I also talk about. The third point is the heartbreak on decision day. Like, that was the game for them. To all they need to do is win that game against Orlando City, and it wasn't also like they were playing on the road too. They were playing at home in that game, and they also have beaten Orlando City on the road just a couple of weeks prior, beating them 4-2 on the road at Exploria Stadium. And I thought they were going to repeat the same thing because of how Orlando wasn't really heading into that game with a lot of momentum, and unfortunately they weren't able to do so and miss out on the playoffs on the final day. But despite that, moving forward for this team, there's definitely some bright future of this team. And I will also say that this team kind of reminds me of the Colorado Rapids, and I would even safely say that they're kind of like the Colorado Rapids of the Eastern Conference, where they definitely have some good pieces on their team, and they've kind of built a lot of their squad, not really kind of on a shoestring budget, because they also have spent some big money, unlike the Rapids kind of made some smart signing on a shoestring budget. But when you look at most of the players that they had, it's kind of like there really isn't a lot of household name, but they can get the job done. And not to mention, Wilfred Fernandez, I mentioned, he is just as good of a head coach as what Robin Fraser is to the Colorado Rapids. But, going back to the moving forward, they already make some big signing this offseason. We talked about they're getting Alistair Johnston from Nashville, and while that's not official yet, it seemed like it's going to be very close to being happen. And if it does happen, that is a huge signing for this team and a huge boost, especially in the fullback position, because I talked about Alistair Johnston being one of the best fullback in the league and having a lot of potential to be a player that Montreal could maybe sell them off for a good sum of money, even though they kind of also have to share that sum of money with Nashville with that sell-on fees. They're already pretty deep in most of the position. Like, when you look at this team, they're pretty much too deep in almost every single position. I mean, the only position that I would say there might be a question is that number 9 position. Well, actually, I shouldn't say the number 9 position, because I just remember that they have Mason Toy, Kyoto, and Ibrahim in that spot. But I think the other spots that maybe they're not too deep is the goalkeeping position. I mean, the goalkeeping is going to be an interesting situation heading into next year, because I think this season they share that the goalkeeping title with Pantemis and Briza there, and it's going to be interesting to see who is going to earn that starting spot, or maybe we're going to see them kind of rotate within the games and see who, of course, will maybe be solidified that spot. And then, of course, the last thing moving forward for them is the rebrand. Will they actually decide to revert the rebrand in the future and kind of do what the Chicago Fire did, which is, they admit that they made a terrible mistake with the rebrand, and they decide to go back to they decided to kind of change their logo. But in the case of Montreal, they'll maybe decide to, let's just bring back the Montreal Impact name and not go with the CF Montreal kind of moniker that just does not work out for this team, and the fans are clearly pissed about that. But either way, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video? And if you're a Montreal fan, what do you think went right, what went wrong, and moving forward, how is this team is going to look? I mean, next season, I really think this team is going to be the dark horse in the Eastern Conference, and I will not be surprised that this team could finish near the top part of the Eastern Conference, because they have the pieces and the core that they're building. I really like it, and that this might be the first time we can see this Montreal team to be a very decent team, and probably a team that could be a contender. Since we seen back in 2015, when remember how they got Didier Drogba and then of course we also had them getting they didn't get this guy, but they have him for a very long time. And Nacho Piatti just kind of gone it into insane mode and being one of the best number 10 and regular to make the playoffs. This is starting to be the case again for this Montreal team, and like I said, with the pieces that they have, this team could definitely be a playoff contender, or maybe even the Eastern Conference contender next season. But let me know in the comments below, and yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.